Hello, friends, and welcome to the hair salon. We have been doing the adult human face proportions. Here they are, that you've been drawing with us step by step in the last two videos. In this video, we are going to learn how to draw hair. Now, most people do scribble scratch, and this is what I have to say to scribble scratch. I'm going to give you some very specific rules about scribbling hair. Scribble is a big no. We do not scribble hair. That is ugly. That is low quality. So instead, we're going to follow these hair rules, okay? So here's your rules for hair. H-A-I-R. Draw the overall shape. First, overall shape. Then you put contour and directional lines to create sections, because hair falls in sections. Contour just means the outline of something. Directional lines means that they are lines that show the directional flow of the lines. And then our last rule is to add value. And yes, that is a rule. You're adding value, which is the darks and the lights. So if you don't follow these rules, drawing the overall shape, contour, and directional lines to create sections, and then add value, then you are not following the rules, okay? So I'm gonna zoom back out a little bit. Maybe, zoom. All right, so now here's the problem. Sometimes people have long hair. Sometimes people have short hair. So what we are going to do is create a little bit of both worlds so that you can see a little bit of the longer hair. On one side, we're gonna have shorter hair, and we're gonna have some that's spiky and some that's wavy, so you can see a little bit of everything, right? Now, on this side, we're gonna start with some long hair, but here's the deal. This right here is your skull. Like, pretend this is if you were a bald person. Your hair cannot go on this. It's got to go above that. Your hair actually has a lot of thickness or depth to it. So let's say we're going to create the overall shape. This is an overall shape of somebody. I'm just going to kind of go through the words a little bit, right? Have a lot of words over here. Your hair can do all sorts of different things. I mean, gosh, I'm just going to do a variety of different things, right? Sometimes your overall shape is behind your neck. Sometimes it's in front of the neck. We're going to leave it behind the neck so that you can still see the notes for the neck. And in the front of the hair, if you've got it where it's like longer and it goes behind your ear, it might look like this. Sometimes people have hair that their bangs fall down in front. So notice how there's big chunks and sections. That's our next step, is the contour directional lines to create sections, because hair, no matter how short, falls in clumps, big sections. So you can kind of throw in a section here, whatever direction you want the hair to look like it's going, you can do like that. So, and it curves down to the scalp like that. So you'll have, like this one, I didn't curve it. So I'll have to go back, curve it a little bit, because it goes down to the scalp. This goes down to the scalp. And that's enough sections there. Now down here, it might be overlapping. So I have a little section of hair that falls in front, and I might have a little section of hair that comes here. I'm gonna have to try and draw through all of my notes there. And that's plenty of sections. Notice how already it looks better than scribble. Scribble is bad. On the next step, we're just gonna focus on the long side right now. We're gonna add value. Value is always going to be darker whenever it's closer to the hair, and you're gonna have that dark to light change, and you always wanna show a scale where it goes from dark to light. So instead of adding like smooth shading, you can actually use lines that show the direction of the hair, and where they just get closer together is a really good way to show value with hair, because it's gonna show the texture of the hair and all the lines of the hair. Now what happens on hair is that right here, this is the crown of the head, right around here. There's always a highlight, a big highlight that hits the top of the head. So we're gonna make sure that we get it. It's like darker, and then it gets lighter, and then it gets darker where it curves back down. And each section is gonna have its own value. So make sure you're really focusing on each section. So we curve, like this is a section, so in between the sections, it's gonna be closer together lines. And then we're gonna let the lines kind of just not be as close together, right? It's okay if they overlap. Darker hair is going to have darker value, and this is maybe like a middle colored hair, like brown, and it'll get really light. You can, since we're using pencil, we can show a few lines through there and they can just get lighter with the pressure of our pencil. This little section here is going to be darker next to the hair, and then we're going to just kind of let it spread out a little bit further. The lines are going to be further apart and get lighter on that crown of your head right here. Down here where it curves over, you're going to put some more shading in there, and I'm just always staying in whatever the direction of the hair is flowing. And here's the same thing. So maybe it curves up from where it connects to the forehead here, and I'll just put those lines always going in the correct direction of the hair and then kind of fading out. And this is a section, so I'm going to make it a little bit darker at that edge because the sections overlap and you want it to look like there's a cast shadow from one section to another. And then you'll let it fade out, and then same thing back here. So maybe this little guy is on top of that one, right? So I'm going to do darker, closer together lines here, and then I'm going to let them spread out where the lightness of my crown is. And then over here where it starts to curve down, I'm going to bring in those lines that are really close together. Now all I'm doing is drawing lines. I'm not even shading really, but they're creating shading because the lines are getting closer together. I'm letting them create value scale with lines. So simple. Look at the difference in this and this. No scribbling, just lines going the direction that I want them to go, right? Now down here, anywhere where it curves, it's going to change dark to light, right? So maybe it's darker down here, and then as it curves up, maybe a little highlight hits the top of that little curve. But on the bottom of the curve, maybe there's a little bit of shading. It can go back and forth, it just depends. And then right here, we're going to have, it's underneath, so it's going to have some shadows on it, so my lines will be closer together. And I don't want to cover up my words, so I'm going to skip through the words. Right here, it'll be, it's behind the ear, so maybe more shadows, and you can curve those lines. Just remember that it's going to go dark to light, so in some areas you're going to have to leave little areas where there's a little glint of light. Right here, it's curving away from the head. Maybe where it pops up, it's going to have a little highlight right there. Same thing right here. It's real close down next to the scalp, right? That's where your skin is, and it's going to get darker in there. Now, if you wanted it to be like black hair, let's say this is really dark black hair, then you would just push those darks a little bit more, and you would still have the nice bright highlights. It just depends on what kind of color hair you're really working with. You can always push it a little bit darker to show a darker shaded hair. So I was working with kind of a brown hair, but you can always push it. See, I just pushed it a little bit darker, and you can still see that there's darks and that there's still highlights, and that there's darks again, and then it pops back up and there's another highlight. It's just over and over and over again. So you get to where you're just layering all of these lines, right? So I'll do a little bit through here. There's some maybe stragglers because this is the wispies, right? Maybe you have a few hairs that are just kind of flying off. Those are the little flyaways. And you can have, if this is a big chunk of hair, you might make it a little darker at the edge. Right, there you go. Down here, we're just going to really focus on this lower part because I don't want to write through this stuff. But behind the ear, it's going to be really dark. Right up next to the neck, your neck and your jawline is casting a lot of shadow onto this section. So we're still shading in sections. This section is real dark up next to it, and then it might get lighter where it flips out, right? And then on the bottom might have a little cast shadow on the bottom of it, but it's going to stay lighter on top. Underneath this, it's the same thing. It's like going to be dark right up next to where the face is. It will get real dark because the head, the shadow of the neck and the jawline is going to cast a shadow onto that hair. So it's going to get real dark up next to it, and then as it curves out, it can get lighter, still showing value scale. It's just in the use of lines. So right up here, it'll get darker right up next to the neck. Same thing right here. It's like dark behind the ear. If you look at the person next to you, you can see how much shadow is right up next to their neck and their ear. And then there's little highlights where it hits the end of the hair here, and then little shadows where it overlaps. Like right here next to it, it'll have little overlaps, so there's like closer. And this is mostly just lines, right? And then maybe this one, I'll do this one real light. Dark back here. It lightens up. I don't want to obscure the words, but you know, it's going to a little bit. So that's neck, so I'm not going to touch that part. But overall, it's a much better than trying to use scribble and then just trying to leave an outline. On the other side, let's remember we're going to do short hair because I wanted to show you a variety. May as well. Oh, I forgot about the wispies. Yeah, hold up. If you have little wispies, I mean, this is really perfect perfectly coiffed, right? So if you want to do a couple of wispies in spots, this is all these layers. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Your hair has wispies, right? You don't have to overdo it or anything, but if you wanted to go for that realism, sometimes you want to throw in the wispies, okay? See the little wispies, but sometimes you don't. I mean, that's up to you. Okay, over on this side, we're going to do more of the same. Draw the overall shape. Got it. My overall shape, maybe I want him to have like real short, kind of spiky hair over here. Notice how I am not drawing directly on that line. Why? Because if I did, it would make him look bald. We don't want him to look bald, or her. We want, because I have super short hair, we want this hair to look like it's coming off of the head in some kind of distance. So maybe if you've got kind of bangs that go down, it might look like that. Or if your hair sticks up, the edge of the hair might look like that, right? Where it's just sticking up. Or let's say you've got waves or curls, you might have this kind of thing where the overall shape looks like this. Now, most of the time, short haircuts will taper or get smaller to the edge of the skin right here. So they'll get a little bit smaller. They can still be wavy, but they'll get thinner to the ear. We already talked about how the hairline cuts down in front of the ear. If you've got real short hair, the edge of your hairline might have something like this, where it's just little lines that create the texture. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see the closer. Now, if I've got this spiky hair over here, then I might create sections. Remember, next is contour directional lines to create sections. So my little sections are not going to be so long like this side. They're going to be real short, 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 look like little W's or something, right? Little sections, short little spiky sections that look just like this. And we're going to shade those. If you are doing curls or curves, your waves, they might look like this, or they might create actual curls where they're kind of coming up or curving down. You might even have a curl that pops up like that, where your outline creates a curl. Just depends on what kind of hair you're drawing. And now we've got most of our sections that we need, right? We'll just put a little bit more curls, and everything's going to need to connect somehow with your value. Just like we did here, we're going to add value, that's our third step, to each section. So if your section starts way over here, I mean, you might have more sections, you can add extras, but these are just straight little lines. So I'm going to do dark where it's closest to the scalp, and then I'm going to let it get light on the ends. So dark where it overlaps or it's closer to the scalp, and light on the ends. Always dark to light over and over again. And I'm doing lines because hair is made up of long strands of hair, right? They're kind of like lines. Now, if something happens and you put too many lines, you need another highlight, you can go back in and erase some things, but I'm layering stuff. So if I feel like it's not enough dark, I'll add more dark. If I feel like it needs more highlights, I'll go back in and I can pop a little highlight back in there and be like, I want it to be lighter here. There's nothing wrong with that, because drawing is just a series of corrections. So where they're overlapping, I'm going to make the shading darker, like that. I mean, I'm just putting the lines whatever direction I want the hair to go. So if he's combed his hair forward, it might look like this. I'm going to overlap these little layers, push those a little darker so I can see the layers a little bit more. It's important to have value scale, dark to light, so it has some three-dimensionality to it. You see how it's looking like jaggedy hair? We went from this to just these little short lines overlapping over and over again and creating a dark to light value scale. And I just changed the direction as the hair changes direction. Now on the curls, it's a little bit different because we want it to stay in that nice curl shape. So on each curl, it's going to be dark, and then it's going to get lighter, and then it's going to get dark again. So every single curl, it's a little bit more work, right? Every single curl is going to have close together lines, and then the lines are going to fade out, like on this spot right here, and then they're going to get close together where it curves down. The top of the curl is going to have a little highlight on it every time, and underneath the curl, it's going to get darker. So this curl, here we go, is coming out this way. It gets lighter, closest to the light, and then it gets darker as it curves around. Anything with a curve is going to have a lot of shading on it. So anywhere a curve happens. So here we go. It'll be darker, and then it curls around, and lighter, and then it curls around, and it hits dark on this little edge. So it's like dark to light to dark. See? Now in between, you got all this space, right? So you could either put in some little hidden curls like that. It's the same type of thing that we were doing here, but it's curving the lines instead of making them straight. And they're kind of in between the curls and they're all hidden. You're just filling the space up with the same type of lines, and it's continuing the curls almost behind what's already here. Now, if you're doing, like there's a big curve here, we're gonna make it darker and then lighter on the top of the curl where it pops up. And then that little curl's got some highlights on it. See how they look like they're popping up, then back down. Popping up, then back down. It's amazing how just lines can do that. So here's some more. They're dark and they get light, dark and they get light. Now it's important on your example, I want you to do long hair and short hair. I want you to practice doing all of it. So if you look at this and you say, I only want long hair or I only want short hair because it's easier, because it's less. No, that's not acceptable. You need to practice long hair and practice short hair. So I put short hair popping up here. So let's make it a little darker where it's closest to the scalp. Remember that? It's going to be darker here and then it'll get lighter at the top. And then all this stuff behind it, it kind of blends in with the curly stuff because I got all kinds of things happening here. We're just going to do little short hair, little short marks to show that it's short hair. Right here, I got a curl. I'll make that into a curl. Right here, I got some little waves. So the waves, this is kind of fun. I'm going to do the waves just like we did the curls, but I'm going to do like in a row. I always have students who ask me about how do I do waves. So let's get rid of this line so it's not in the way. And I'm going to create a wave all down the side here. So if this is the bottom of the wave, the curl, we're just going to have a shadow that curls down. It's a little line that curls down. See that? And I'm going to do the same thing on this part. I'm going to curl it down. See how it dipped down on that little part? And I'm making little waves all the way across. Then, oh, this one too. We'll just make this one be a wave. There we go. It kind of got dark. Whatever, I messed that one up. Then you got to do some transitional, right? You can't just go dark to white. You got to have some in-between colors. Like here we have the in-between where they kind of fade out. So we're going to curve back up. We're going to let them spread out a little bit and lighten the little space. So there's a value scale from a little bit of middle gray. The lines are getting thinner and spreading out, and they're curving upward instead of downward. So the first lines we curve down, and they're real close together, all in the dip, right? And then the top lines, they don't even go all the way across in some spots because I'm trying to make it look like it's light and it's skipping some lines. So now you got like this wavy effect. Down here where it gets real short, you can kind of just do little hatchy marks and just fill it with whatever. If you want it to be darker hair, you get closer together and make them real dark. And then on the edge here, no, I didn't talk about the edge over here either. It might be just dots. If it's shaved right there, it might just be plain up little dots that you can kind of fill in the space and make that texture. On this side, we might have lines where it dips down and curves and kind of like you might have some little stragglies, right, that go next to your face. But these little lines are gonna also, it's just like every other part. It's just kind of a piece of hair that tucks behind the ear like that, going the direction and putting in extra shadows because it's right up next to your face. So you don't actually have to do the little wispies if you don't want to. So we'll zoom out and you can see the overall shape of long hair and short hair, and then putting all the fun value, but just with lines so far. So, and there's your hair.